What was the first thing that you saw that confirmed what you were thinking?
What caught my attention was the autism problem. Some of the lay people that I was working with were bringing this to my attention, that we've got all these parents of these autistic kids and they all think that it happened right after their mandated school shots. And then, of course, when you looked at the data, the problem was reinforced. It was irrefutable.
Welcome to today's Alix Mayer Show. Today, I have my friend and colleague, Dr. Richard Fox. He's the medical doctor and lawyer who filed our due process lawsuit in California to finally end vaccine mandates in California. Despite how dire the vaccine mandate situation here is in California, the legal landscape for our due process case to end mandates is actually very positive. So thank you for tuning in. I think you're really going to enjoy this show. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And also, please share this episode with anybody who could benefit from this information. We know so many of our listeners understand the relationship between health freedom and our personal and economic freedoms. It's the same principle. If you're one of our audience who's concerned about inflation, paper asset crises, and ongoing monetary crises, you may have already started accumulating gold and silver or are considering doing so. There's no gold dealer we know who's better positioned to serve the freedom community than Mish International in Menlo Park, California. I'm one of the many happy customers who's purchased gold or silver in their showroom, or I've had it delivered through their secure courier service. They are true veterans who are honest, fair, and reliable, and so knowledgeable regarding all the choices of gold and silver bars and coins to help you choose the products that fit your goals and your worldview. The principal, Robert Mish, is world-renowned for his expertise in rare coins as well. Write down this number, 650-324-9110. That's 650-324-9110. And visit mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com to learn more about this notable company. Dr. Richard Fox, welcome to the Alix Mayer Show. I am so excited to have you as my guest today. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today in studio.
It's a great privilege. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I feel very fondly toward you after our few years of working together. And do you remember when we first met?
Was it at Calvary Church, one of those public lectures that they had?
Yep.
Seems like I was standing behind you in the question line or something like that.
That sounds like something you and I would do. And then from there, you were running for office, and then I came to speak at one of your meetings during that period. Can you tell everybody about that?
I believe I was probably in 2022. I ran for Congress, mostly so I could get my point of view out that COVID was not the danger that it was made out to be, and that you really didn't need to get the COVID shots if you just got proper treatment. And so my campaign statement was really all about that. But I figured that was the most cost-effective way to get my message out to the most people, especially the people who would not otherwise come across it, because it would be in the voter guide. So I'm not sure how many people read it or were enlightened by it, but then I did several public lectures, campaign events essentially, to get that word out. And then you came along and helped me, because you also appeared at those campaign events to talk specifically about the problems with the childhood vaccines.
Yeah, and the EUA and the fake FDA approvals. And you famously, when we were locked down, you were writing prescriptions for ivermectin for people who were desperate for it, right?
It became evident relatively early in the COVID epidemic that we did have treatment. First, we had hydroxychloroquine, and then subsequently ivermectin was found to be effective. But you couldn't get it from your doctor. I collaborated with George Fareed and his group in Palm Springs, adopted their protocol and created a website so that people who wanted to get treatment would simply go to my website, fill out the form, and because we were in lockdown, people couldn't come in to see doctors anyway, so it was okay to do telemedicine. And so we did telemedicine for COVID treatment. So people could fill out the form, had their medical history, what they're allergic to, any contraindications, and then they would indicate what pharmacy they wanted their script sent to. So then we would fax the script to the pharmacy and also give them an email with instructions as to how to use it. We treated upwards of 500, probably close to 600 patients by that means.
That's significant.
And our pitch was COVID is really a pretty easy infection to treat if you treat it early, preferably within the first 24 to 48 hours. And so the pitch was, before you get sick, go to my website, fill out the form, get your drugs, and have them in the medicine cabinet so that when you do feel sick, you just start taking them.
Yep.
You don't have to wait for a positive COVID test. Everybody knew what it felt like to get COVID. So if you feel like you've got COVID, just take the drugs because they're very, very safe. They're safer than not treating. By emphasizing early treatment, we got very good results. I would say the average age of the patients that I treated was probably 65 to 70. So it was a vulnerable population. We had quite a few even in their 80s and some in their 90s. The oldest one we treated was 98 years old. Obviously, that would be a very high-risk person, but she got through her infection just fine. So out of that 500, 600, as near as I can tell, we had no deaths whatsoever. Meanwhile, people who followed Dr. Fauci's advice were dropping right and left.
Yep.
And they were piling up in the hospitals and in the nursing homes. I think we may have had a half dozen or so who ended up in the hospital that they were very vulnerable, and their families took them. Well, they would get them started on treatment, and then the families would get nervous and take them to the hospital. But they all made it out fine. Nobody ended up in intensive care.
Oh, that's remarkable, given what was going on in hospitals at the time.
Yeah, right.
Wow. So, Dr. Fox, take us back just a little bit to your background. I know there's some really significant parts of your background as a doctor and as a lawyer, and I actually don't even know what you were doing before we got locked down.
Originally, my medical training was in pediatrics, and particularly in two subspecialties of pediatrics, that is children's lung diseases and also the care of critically ill children. And so that's what I did for quite a few years. I was also being asked to, by a lot of adult patients, to see them. So I ended up doing adult pulmonary and adult critical care. So I was mostly retired from that. Well, let me back up a few seconds. So about 2009, 2010, I was having some administrative difficulties with one of the hospitals I worked at. And in my view, they wanted to restrict my privileges for anti-competitive purposes. In my view, they were contracted with doctors who wanted to be competitors of mine, and people preferred my care. So they were trying to restrict my privileges. And it was costing me a ton of money for lawyers. And so I thought, you know what, why don't I just go to law school? At least I'll understand this a lot better, and I won't have to spend quite so much. So I went to Santa Clara University Law School on nights, the evening program. I could do my patient care by day. And if I did a good job, the patients would all be stable, and I wouldn't be interrupted while I was in class at law school.
So that's incentive to do an even better job.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And after I got done at law school, then I would go back to the hospital and see my patients there and make sure everybody was tucked in for the night. So that's how I ended up with my law degree and with my law practice. I really wasn't involved in any litigation until this COVID thing came along, and then especially the childhood vaccine problem. How that developed was, with COVID, we came to understand that there were a lot of problems with the COVID vaccines that weren't being talked about, that were being suppressed. And these mandates, people who had to get COVID shots to keep their jobs, to go to college, things like that. And some of them wanted to oppose that, with legal actions. So I was involved informally in that regard. And then as COVID wound down, a number of people, doctors working in that COVID space, people like Peter McCullough, for instance, and non-physicians like Steve Kirsch, started to raise questions about, well, what about the childhood vaccines?
So up to that point, you didn't suspect childhood vaccines of being dangerous? So this was like a COVID awakening.
It was, and you see, in my pediatric subspecialty practice, I never gave vaccines. That was the job of the primary care doctors. So I wasn't really aware of all the complications that were occurring. Some of these other people started to point out that maybe the process for approving the school vaccines is questionable, just like it was for the COVID vaccines. And then we started looking at the VAERS data, the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Event Registry, and it was pretty obvious that there were a lot of problems.
What was the first thing that you saw that just confirmed what you were thinking?
What caught my attention was the autism problem. Some of the lay people that I was working with were bringing this to my attention, that we've got all these parents of these autistic kids, and they all think that it happened right after their mandated school shots. And after talking with a number of them, obviously there was a problem. And then, of course, when you looked at the data, the problem was reinforced. And then, of course, when you read the book by Brian Hooker and Robert Kennedy, they had the data, in spades.
Yeah.
It was irrefutable. Brian did such a wonderful job researching that.
I agree. That's called Vax Unvax. I think a lot of people have it. And if you don't have it, you really need to get that book.
It's the Bible.
Yeah, it truly is. So you were one of the few medical doctors who believed the parents. Why do you think so many medical doctors don't believe parents when they say, my child was fine, they got vaccines, and then they regressed into autism? Don't 50% of autism cases occur within a day or two of vaccination?
Typically within the first few days, even within the first few hours. I haven't really tried to interview or query the doctors about that.
Maybe because it's iatrogenic and you weren't one of the doctors giving vaccines, you could see it more easily.
I suspect that they must see it, and there's got to be a lot of parents who are coming to them with autistic children asking, is this the result of the shots that you gave my child? Mm-hmm. They must be aware of the problem. So in the law, we would say they're conflicted. They have a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's the obvious economic problem that something like a third of the practice income of most general pediatric doctors, a third of their income is from giving shots. They're really conflicted.
And how much of the rest of their income is because of the treatment of the conditions caused by the shots?
So you have the well child care, and so the parents have to bring the children in for well child checkups. Well, the well child checkups exactly mirror the CDC's schedule for shots.
Just so happens.
Right. And while we're here, we'll check and make sure that the child's height and weight are on the growth chart. That's their well child income. And then there's the sick child income. But when you look at that, probably half or more of those sick visits are for colds and ear infections and sore throats, things of that nature. Well, another hero in this movement is Dr. Paul Thomas, the pediatrician from Oregon, mm-hmm. who wrote the book, I think, called The Vaccine Friendly Plan or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had a very interesting practice in Oregon for many years because, unlike most pediatricians, he had a vaccine optional practice. It was up to the parent. If you wanted to get the shots, you could, and if you didn't have to. Whereas in most pediatric offices, it was sort of a requirement that you had to get the shots to be in the practice. So he had his vaccine optional practice, and he kept pretty good records. And so a health statistics researcher came along and offered to analyze his statistics for him, which they did. And as a result, he wrote this book. And he compared the outcomes in his vaxxed children with the unvaxxed. And it turned out that the unvaxxed children were a whole lot healthier than the vaxxed children. Completely counterintuitive. The vaxes weren't preventing illness. They were apparently causing it.
Yeah, I remember a few of the stats from that study, and it's my friend Dr. James Lyons-Weiler who came in and did the statistical analysis, and it was based on number of office visits in the two populations. But the thing that really stands out to me, Dr. Fox, is that the vaccinated children visited the pediatrician for fever 25 times more than the unvaccinated children. And that's just completely counterintuitive if vaccines are supposed to prevent all of that, right?
Yep, yep. Now you can sort of see the magnitude of the conflict of interest that the pediatricians have in this. And Dr. Thomas is to be congratulated for elucidating this. For his trouble, the state of Oregon revoked his medical license.
Right.
Talk about conflicts of interest. So the other culprit on all this that I see is the electronic medical record.
Right. Well, let me just back up and say, so Dr. Paul Thomas lost his medical license for making children healthier.
Yep.
Is the bottom line.
Yep.
All right.
The state of Oregon.
Yep. That's criminal.
So what happened in the last 15, 20 years is we got these electronic medical records. And everybody knows about them now because now when you go to the doctor spends all their time essentially conversing with the computer and ignoring the patient for the most part.
Right.
You don't have a doctor-patient relationship anymore. You have a doctor-computer relationship.
Right. Which most of us can do at home.
Right. But with electronic medical records, it's very easy for you to be audited to see what's your vaccine compliance rate.
That's right.
And they're all having to work. Most of these pediatricians now have to work for large medical groups, and they're on a salary. And those groups are getting incentives from the vaccine companies if their vaccine rates achieve a certain rate. So they're being told by management. So the electronic medical record is essentially a snitch, and it snitches them out to management that they're not meeting their target for their vax rates, and it's costing us money because we're not getting the incentives anymore.
That's a good way to look at it, as a snitch. And is it true that some insurance companies pay $400 per fully vaccinated child as long as they reach a certain vaccination target?
Yeah, that's the goal. But you see, the doctor, it's not necessarily that the money goes directly into the doctor's pocket. It has to go through the medical group, and I'm sure they take a cut of it.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, you're a pediatrician. Have you been served up with any of those incentive plans from insurance?
Well, no, I just don't deal with insurance.
Tell everyone about your pediatric practice.
So, like I said, I never had a pediatric practice before. I saw children with asthma and things like that, but I never did general pediatrics. But after I got involved in this vaccine controversy, parents started coming to me, Dr. Fox, can we come to you for general pediatric care? Because I had people come to me to say, we called 20 different pediatric offices to see if they would see us without shots, and none of them, we were refused by all of them.
Unbelievable.
And so they wanted to come and see me, and if I was amenable to doing that without any vaccine mandate. And of course, well, sure, you could come and see me. So I have people coming to me from 50, 75 miles away now. They have to drive for several hours to come and see me for a well child checkup. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, you're the only vaccine optional pediatrician in the entire area.
Well, at least that is openly vax friendly.
Yes. Everybody, there are a few others that I know of, but they have to be very quiet and under the radar. But you're not quiet.
No, it's on my website. So, but the other thing I've noticed in doing my vax-free pediatric practice is my experience has been exactly that of Dr. Thomas. These kids just don't get sick. I have expectant parents who come to see me for a prenatal visit, and they want to know, what should we do about childhood vaccines? And I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know that you need them. I said, you're welcome to get the other point of view. Go to the CDC's website, go to the AAP's website, and you can read their side of the story. You don't have to just take my word for it. do your own research, do your due diligence. But in my experience, it doesn't seem to be necessary. So my advice is breastfeed your child for the first year of life, get them through their first winter viral respiratory season with plenty of maternal antibodies, and there's a good chance that you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's proven to be the case. It's hard for me to remember the last time once in a while I get an email or a text message from one of my patients that the child might have a problem. In fact, more often than not, it's something like, well, they got a rash or they got a bee sting. Once in a while, somebody calls me with a question about a child's got croup. Well, I say, just take a video of them and text it to me, and we can generally just take care of those things without any office visit at all.
Yeah.
That doesn't come up more than once every month or so.
And then you prescribe antibiotics if you think it's croup?
For most croup, you don't need antibiotics.
Oh.
You just need a humidifier.
Oh, well,
Yes.
the low-tech stuff always seems to be better.
Yeah. Anyway, I can leave town for several days, and I don't have to worry about, well, one of my patients are going to get sick. Worst case scenario, they can go to urgent care, and I've had that happen a few times. This has a lot of major implications for the practice of pediatrics.
It sure does, because your pediatric practice is so different than every other one that I know of. So what's the major difference?
The major difference is if kids have healthy lifestyles, breastfeed for the first year of life, they probably, for the most part, don't need all these well-child visits. The parent can weigh them and measure them and go to the CDC's website and see if they're on their growth curve or not.
True.
If they want a well-child checkup, most of the urgent cares will do those for them. I had a call from an adult just a few days ago that I've known for quite a few years, good friend of mine. She said, Dr. Fox, my husband and I haven't been to the doctor in years. We don't know what our blood pressure is. Ever since COVID, we don't trust doctors. We don't go to doctors anymore. But I'm starting to worry just a little bit. Maybe I should get a checkup. But can you recommend a primary care doctor that I can see? And I said, well, you've been at some of the meetings where I've addressed people. And as you remember, I always ask the question, how many people here in this room do not have a primary care doctor that they feel they can trust since COVID? And usually most of the hands go up. Most people either don't have a primary care doctor now or they don't trust the one they're going to.
That's a dramatic shift.
Yep.
Because 6 years ago, everybody would have said they had one.
Yep. So anyway, I said to her, if you just want a general physical checkup, check your blood pressure, your heart, get some labs, I said, just go to urgent care and ask them for, they do pre-employment physicals, preschool physicals all the time. Just say you need a general physical and get some lab work done. And then you'll get a report. Then you can decide if you need to see a primary care doctor. Likely as not, you can put all that information into an AI program, and it'll tell you what you need to know.
Yeah, things have really changed, haven't they?
Right.
So yeah, you've famously said a number of times that your patients come and see you once, and then they typically don't need to see you again, and that's not your typical pediatric practice. And then how would pediatricians stay in business if they had your business model?
That's right. I'm not sure that general pediatrics is a viable business at this point. 100 years ago, people just had a family doctor that they went to. And, I suspect that we could probably go back to some kind of system like that, or some system where you see a nurse practitioner who gives you a physical and you put all that information into an AI program. And if you trust your AI program, we don't necessarily trust all AI programs, but so I think we may see some dramatic changes in the way medicine is practiced in the future if the business changes, because right now, in order to have medical insurance under Obamacare, you have to have a primary care doctor, all this sort of thing
Right.
that's this business model. And what we need, as you and I know, is a lot more medical freedom so that you can pick your doctor and an insurance plan that allows you to use your benefits the way you want to use them
Yep.
and not the way the medical industrial complex insists that you use them.
Yeah, which is why a lot of people are going the route I went now, and I have a health share program. It's through a ministry, and that supports the kind of care I get, which is treating myself. Like one of my nicknames is Alix Mayer Medical MacGyver, and I typically find my own solutions for myself, and so I use it as kind of classic indemnity insurance. If I have to go somewhere because I can't figure it out myself, they'll pay 90%. And it's what I need. It's more like catastrophe insurance, which I think everybody should have. But I don't think we need these classic insurance programs that cost thousands of dollars a month per person. It's such a waste of money for most people.
Yes, I applaud President Trump for loosening up the rules on health savings accounts and health reimbursement arrangements to allow more and more people to do that, and now requiring hospitals and doctors and insurance plans to be more transparent about their pricing and all that sort of thing. So, and Secretary Kennedy and Director Oz are working on those initiatives as well. We just need a lot more of that.
Yeah, we do. And it still hasn't trickled down that much to the consumer level because when I do have to go in, which is maybe once a year for something, I'm cash pay because of my health share, and they're always scrambling. They have no idea what to bill me. They don't know how to tell me how much it is. It's just bizarre. Do you ever wonder what my foundation, Free Now Foundation, really does? It turns out that after all the articles and videos that I do, that a lot of people still wonder what we really do. We're California's leading medical freedom nonprofit, but did you know we're the only group in California trying to end the medical mandates so children can go to school safely in California? And what does that mean? People don't get this, but it means there's no need for an exemption if there's no mandate. We won't need a religious exemption. We won't need a medical exemption. We won't need any type of exemptions anymore because parents will just be able to say no. No is a complete sentence. And Free Now Foundation is going to stay in the courts and do this legal strategy, pursue it as long as it takes until parents call the shots again in California and beyond, and parents can just say a simple no. So if you share this vision of a world where we don't have medical mandates, where children do not need an exemption of any sort to go to school, and this work calls to you, please consider supporting us at Free Now Foundation, freenowfoundation.org. That's spelled FREENOW foundation.org, and make a donation today. Hey folks, I'm here with Del Bigtree on the set of The Highwire.
Hey, good to see you.
And Del, you're coming to Silicon Valley this fall, aren't you?
I am. I think a lot about it. The last fundraiser I did with you, we did like 2 different nights.
I had 5 couples come up to me and say that you saved their marriage.
Oh, good.
I had a PA and a nurse say that you had totally changed their minds, and that creates waves.
Yeah, it really does. If you want to get to a great fundraiser, is doing great work. Free Now Foundation, I love the work that you guys are doing. California can get really testy. You're the most oppressed state in America, but you're actually starting to make some headway. We're seeing some of the original authors of SB 277 wondering if they've made the right decision.
And I have to say, California is the worst state in the country for medical freedom. There's a medical exemption on the books, but it doesn't function. It's designed to fail. So we have no options for children to go to school in California without vaccines. But there is so much hope. Free Now Foundation, we have 2 lawsuits. One of them would totally end the need for exemptions. There's a lot of stuff happening in California, and I think we're going to see a lot of progress over the next year or 2, and things are going to change dramatically.
Well, look, you want to get involved, and I'm going to be speaking at this fundraiser September 12th in Silicon Valley. Free Now Foundation, where do we go to sign up or be a part of that?
Go to freenowfoundation.org and you can sign up for the fundraiser. You can get to meet Del in person, get a picture with him, ask your questions. We always have a robust Q&A. It is going to be a good time. Margaritas, organic tacos, and all of your medical freedom friends.
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
Me too. Let's go back to the children's vaccination schedule in California. Now you become very familiar with the problems of vaccination among children, not only autism, but SIDS, autoimmunity, neurological issues, learning difficulties. And we have this de facto mandatory vaccination scheme in California. So once you learned about that, you wanted to do something about it. Tell me about how you came to the conclusion that you needed to file a lawsuit.
There were some parents who approached me. Well, it happens all the time in my general pediatric practice that parents bring their child in not so much for a well child checkup as, Dr. Fox, can you write us an exemption from these mandates that our child will have to comply with in order to go to school? And I have to tell them, you really can't do that in California. Doctors really can't write medical exemptions anymore because the Medical Board of California it has very stringent requirements on that, and a lot of pediatricians have lost their licenses for writing those exemptions, even when they had arguably legitimate reasons to do so. So I would have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. But after several of those, I said, well, maybe we can file a lawsuit to at least to challenge these mandates and get rid of them. So that's kind of the back door by which Dr. Fox became Lawyer Fox, challenging the state on these vaccine mandates.
So then we partnered together with Free Now Foundation, providing the funds, and you work at pro bono rates. I mean, you are not going to become a gazillionaire off of this lawsuit. I mean, if this were your only source of income, you'd be in trouble, in other words. But we are partnering on this to change the law in California. We want to make vaccination voluntary again and do away with mandates entirely, so no one would even need an exemption. Because if you don't have a mandate, then there's no need for exemptions. So let's talk in detail about the due process case now to end mandates. Tell us a little bit about it.
The legal theory of this is that children, just like adults, have rights under the law. And under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, there's the right to not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And obviously, these children were being damaged. Their liberty was being infringed by these mandates. They were not free to not get them. And when they got them, their health was endangered. So we saw a clear problem with children's rights. The other right that children have is the right to be educated. That's a constitutional right. It's been in the Supreme Court decided that 100 years ago, and yet they were being told that they couldn't go to school if they didn't get these dangerous shots. So there were sort of two due process problems: the right to be free of dangerous medical care, care that can harm you or even kill you, and the right to attend school. There have been some other cases like this, and I can go into those in a minute. But one of the things that was unique about our case is that we used all that data from Brian Hooker's book to show all the harm. In fact, I got the Kindle version of the book so that I had a digital version of it so that I could do snips from all his charts and put them in my lawsuit.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So we just plagiarized like crazy from Brian.
And this is unique because in California, there have been some lawsuits to get exemptions back and to end these mandates, but no one's been able to bring in the science before. Is there a reason why we could finally bring in the science this time and it would fly in the courts? Does that have to do with like the Chevron deference decision?
That wasn't specifically what I had in mind, but the particular legal hook that we have here that has not been used before, well, let me rewind just a little bit. The legal authority for that California always invokes for vaccine mandates is, as you know, the 1905 Jacobson case.
Yeah, tell our audience about that.
Yeah, so in 1905 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, they had an outbreak of smallpox, and they decided everybody had to be vaxxed. But Mr. Jacobson objected. He said, well, I don't think I need it, and they're not all that safe. And so he So the city of Cambridge, I think, sued him to force him to get his smallpox vaccine. And it went up through the courts, eventually ended up at the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, this is 1905. The science of vaccinology was non-existent at the time.
Zero science.
Yes. In fact, the smallpox vaccine of the day was typically they got pus from people who had smallpox and inoculated into other people.
Sounds sanitary.
Exactly. That's what Mr. Jacobson said. He said, there's no quality control to any of this. This is voodoo, and you can't force me to do it. Well, the Supreme Court took the view that the Massachusetts state legislature had the power to decide what was safe and effective. Yes.
So wait, so the standard for safety at the time in vaccination was if the state thought the vaccines were safe and effective, not the science?
I got news for you. It's still the standard, and I'm going to get to that.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to get to that.
I know you're right.
So, they said the legislature has determined that the smallpox vaccine is safe and effective, and that's good enough for us.
Because legislators are experts in science
Right.
and medicine and vaccines.
And they're not conflicted either.
No, not at all.
They don't take money from pharma.
Nope. They're pure as snow.
That's right. So that was Jacobson in 1905.
Okay.
We pointed out in our lawsuit. Well, there's been some progress in this area because in the late 1980s, too many people were filing lawsuits against the vaccine companies because their kids were being badly damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in its infinite wisdom, the Congress passed the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act,
Yep.
which, guess what? It gave a get-out-of-jail-free card to all the vaccine manufacturers.
Full liability protection.
Yep.
Yeah.
They could not be sued if your child was autistic or dead or paralyzed or whatever.
So what incentive did vaccine makers have to make a safe product after 1986?
Nothing. Or to do proper testing to see. In fact, they had an incentive to not do any testing.
Right. Because if they found anything in their testing, then they were by law obligated to disclose any issues that they knew of. So they were incentivized to not test anything or do phony tests.
Yep. So the fig leaf that the Congress put on this was they said, well, tell you what, we'll allow the vaccine manufacturers to collect a certain amount of money and put it in a vaccine injury pool so that the kids who are injured, we can compensate them for their injury.
And do people know that it's 75 cents per dose that is collected?
Yeah, and most injury is not compensated. The restrictions are pretty tight. The parents have to go through years of litigation to collect anything. They don't cover autism, for instance.
Right.
It's only the most egregious injuries that are covered. But notwithstanding that, there have been tens of thousands that have been compensated, and the total amount of compensation paid out so far is around $4.5 to $5 billion. Mm-hmm. So we put that in our lawsuit that we don't have to ask, does the legislature think that these vaccines are safe? Because the Congress has already found that they're not safe by passing a Vaccine Injury Act.
Brilliant. Yep.
It's not open for discussion.
Yeah. So that's just a fact that you serve up to the court.
Yes. By your own test in Jacobson, your test in Jacobson was, well, has the legislature found these to be injurious? And the answer is, well, yes, the Vaccine Injury Act has found that to be the case.
Yeah, so we don't even have to prove a scientific standard. We can use the legislative standard that was established in Jacobson.
Right.
Brilliant.
So, well, you and I may think it's a brilliant strategy, but we haven't gotten very far with the courts.
Well, we're moving along. So I want everybody to understand one more thing about the 14th Amendment due process rights. That also includes the right to the upbringing of your child, right?
The upbringing has to do with the fact that the parents supposedly are ultimately responsible for deciding the child's medical care. Mm-hmm. and their education. So parents have primary responsibility and a prerogative as to the child's medical care and their educational care. So why can't the parent just refuse the vaccine? Well, you can if you want to give up the child's right to education.
Yeah, and that's weighing one fundamental right against the other. And there was a case that tried to pair those with each other, and it was called Love, and they lost. They famously lost in California, but that's not our case.
Right. So we sued the state of California, specifically the Department of Health, which is the state authority that regulates or they oversee these school mandates. Sued them in federal court in Sacramento, which is where the State Department of Health is located. And we had several plaintiffs in the case, some of which were out of school because they were not allowed to attend school without their shots, so they were denied their education. And the court considered the case. The state filed a motion to dismiss the case on the basis of Jacobson. And after several months, the federal court agreed with the state that under Jacobson, we had no case and that it should be dismissed. So we then appealed that to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, which is where it sits at this time.
Yeah, tell everybody what A.G. Bonta did.
Well, so what's happened is we've gotten caught in a traffic jam in the Ninth Circuit. Because while we were bringing our 14th Amendment due process case, we had other groups that were challenging these vaccine mandates on the basis of First Amendment freedom of religion grounds. And they were working their way through the court system on a First Amendment theory. Well, they got to the Ninth Circuit before we did. And so about a year earlier. So by the time we got out of district court in Sacramento and got up to the Ninth Circuit, these other cases were already fully briefed. Two in particular, Royce v. Bonta, I think it is, and Grimsby,
Versus Pan. Yeah.
So those cases were set for oral argument last April, and we got to the Ninth Circuit, I think, in February. And so the Attorney General's office filed a motion with the Ninth Circuit to essentially put our case on ice until these other cases could get decided.
And why do you think they did that?
Yeah. Well, you know, if they could put us on ice, then they are not going to lose, and no loss is a win for them.
But they have to hear our case once the religious ones are decided, right?
Yes, but we'll see. That could be a while. So I checked on those cases last night just to see how we're coming. Oh, let me back up for a second.
Okay.
So they had the oral argument in middle of April, I believe
Yeah,
it was.
and you and I both listened live.
Yes. And the argument actually went pretty well for the parents. It's a 3-judge panel, and 2 of the judges were pretty sympathetic to the parents and their parental rights and their religious freedom rights. The 3rd judge asked a lot more questions or had a lot more objections to that. So it looks like maybe what we'll get is a 2-to-1 decision in favor of the parents. We'll have to see.
You think for 1 or maybe 2 of those 4 religious exemption cases?
So, yes, there were 4 cases to be heard in the Ninth Circuit. The 2 that we mentioned, Royce and Grimsby, that looks pretty favorable, but we'll see.
Yeah. And when do you expect the Ninth Circuit to render their decision?
I expect to see those decisions come down in the next 4 to 8 weeks,
Oh, that's very soon.
hopefully before school starts.
Yeah.
Now, there was the 3rd case. That one had some procedural problems,
Yeah.
and
That was the We the Patriots case, right?
yes, the way the Patriots case had some procedural problems, not having to do with the merits of the case. And there was an objection that maybe the court didn't even have jurisdiction to hear the case. So that one looks a lot more iffy as far as what they'll do with that. They may sort of do a horse trade and put We the Patriots, deny We the Patriots, and tell them to go back to the district court and start over and follow the proper procedures.
Yeah.
So that'll be the easy way out for them, is to just send that one back on procedural grounds.
If they were to grant a win to Grimsby or Royce, we would have the religious exemption back officially in California, right? Just one of those needs to win.
Yep. So I think at that point, We the Patriots could go back to the district court citing Royce and Grimsby and win in the district court.
Okay. And further affirm that religious exemption,
Yep.
right?
The fourth case is called Dersher v. Pan, I believe it is. And they somehow got in the local traffic lane as opposed to the express lane. They did not get on the argument schedule in April for some reason. And so their argument was set for 3 days ago on Monday.
Oh,
But when I checked the docket last night, it turned out that their argument got vacated, and the Ninth Circuit ordered that their case was also put on ice until Royce and Grimsby get decided,
okay.
and then their lawyers can file more briefing arguing on the basis of Royce and Grimsby. So that fourth case is also sort of detoured, but eventually I think they'll get their relief
But Royce
too.
and Grimsby are the two strongest cases out of all those four. So that should give everybody a lot of hope. Now, I want to talk about a really important topic related to our due process case that would end mandates. And that is, I see this whole legal landscape changing in our favor month by month. So first of all, the Mirabelli case, I want to talk about how that makes our case more likely to succeed. And then I want to talk about three things that make our case more likely to succeed. So I want you to talk about the Mirabelli case. Then I want you to talk about these religious exemption cases. If those succeed, those aren't just based on the First Amendment, those are also based on the 14th Amendment. So that would also help us. And then third, there was a Trump executive order affirming the right for parents to direct the upbringing of their children, which is a 14th Amendment statement. So I feel like in all those three areas, it's setting the legal landscape up for success in our case. Are you feeling that? And then can you go into detail on my detailed question?
Okay, just the overarching question is which way is the wind blowing? And I think the wind is blowing in our direction, especially with President Trump's leadership and Secretary Kennedy's leadership. They've now, shined a spotlight on these vaccines and what their problems are. And our good friend Jay Bhattacharya is now the head of the NIH, and they've initiated a lot of studies to revisit the science. Hopefully the FDA is going to revisit the approval process as well. So I think we have a lot of things moving in our direction. Now, going back to Mirabelli for a second. Yes, a very important Supreme Court decision that came down in April. And in that case, what happened was that, I think it was a California case too, that the schools were secretly transitioning children to opposite genders and concealing it from the parents. And some parents found out about it and sued to put a stop to it. And they lost in the district court, they lost in the Ninth Circuit, and it went up to the Supreme Court. The parents' argument was, well, we have fundamental religious objections to this transitioning thing. So the Ninth Circuit decision went against the parents. The Ninth Circuit got handled rather roughly by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, which is an embarrassment to the Ninth Circuit. You don't want your decision overturned by the Supreme Court if you're the Ninth Circuit.
Well, not only that, but they were essentially rebuked. They weren't just reversed. They were rebuked.
So that's even worse.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't just a slap on the wrist.
So what did the Supreme Court say to the Ninth Circuit Court about the Mirabelli case?
Yep. So the Supreme Court said, look, we decided a case a year ago, Hochul v. Taylor, which was a New York case on religious freedom and parental rights. And that was a case where the school was reading porno to the preschoolers. And the parents objected to that on religious grounds, and it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court handled New York rather roughly in that case. Mm-hmm. And so in Mirabelli, the parents had argued Hochul v. Taylor to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit said, well, that doesn't have anything to do. That was porno, and this is secret transitioning. They're not the same. These aren't the same religious freedom issues, so you lose.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court,
splitting hairs there a little too much.
Yeah, that's the way the Supreme Court saw it. They said, well, what didn't you understand about Hochul?
Yeah. So the Ninth Circuit Court got embarrassed. And go ahead.
And the embarrassment was this, that Mirabelli went up to the Supreme Court on an emergency motion. Mm-hmm. In technical terms, it's called the shadow docket. Most of the time when the Supreme Court takes a case, it's a very elaborate formal process. You apply for certiorari. In other words, the Supreme Court only hears the cases it wants to hear. Mm-hmm. You have to knock on the door, and they have to open the door for you to get in.
Or it's also called a cert petition.
Cert petition. So you petition for cert, and then they think about it for a while, and then they grant your cert petition, and then each side gets to argue, brief their case, rebuttals. Then they get oral argument in front of the Supreme Court. It's quite an elaborate process. Takes like a year or so. But sometimes there's something that needs to be decided a lot faster than that. And for instance, President Trump has brought a lot of emergency motions to the Supreme Court. Ordinarily, the Supreme Court does not like to decide things on that sort of hasty, emergent basis because they like to take a lot of time to think through very carefully all the implications of the case and let everybody be heard. So they don't like deciding cases on the so-called shadow or emergency docket. But Mirabelli went up on the shadow docket and was decided on the shadow docket. And in fact, the opinion was a per curiam decision. That is, most of their regular cases are decided. There's somebody writes a majority opinion, and it's written by one of the justices, and then the other justices sign on, that kind of thing. But in some cases, they're sort of handled they're just decided summarily. Mm. And those cases are usually per curiam cases. Mm. This one was decided summarily under the emergency docket on a per curiam opinion. So that was really the rebuke to the Ninth Circuit, was you guys are so far out of line, we don't need to decide this in detail. We already decided it in Hochul. Uh-huh. But nonetheless, there was a concurring opinion written by Justice Barrett, concurring in the per curiam decision. And that's where you get to read, what do we really think about this? And she had two or three concurrences with that. I think Justice Roberts concurred, Justice Kavanaugh concurred.
What about Gorsuch?
I don't think he actually signed on the concurrence. He was with the per curiam.
Okay.
So, but what they explained was in Mirabelli that we're deciding it on two bases. One, we see that the parents have a First Amendment religious freedom right, mm-hmm. and that's been trampled by this, what the school has done. But we also see a 14th Amendment parental upbringing right that's being trampled. So they actually went a little bit farther than they needed to because the Hochul case was only a First Amendment case, I believe.
Oh, interesting. So the Supreme Court pulled in the 14th
Yeah,
Amendment.
kind of added that
Yeah.
in.
But all these religious exemption cases being heard by our Ninth Circuit right now, they all rest on both the First and the 14th. So that rebuke from the Supreme Court, especially bringing in the 14th Amendment, will help the Ninth Circuit Court make the right decision on the religious cases. And then by association, that'll help ours because that's going to affirm the First and the 14th Amendment. And then ours is based on the 14th.
I think so. We'll see, when we get the decisions in Royce and Grimsby, we'll see if they confine themselves to just the First Amendment issue or if they want to venture into the 14th Amendment issue.
Oh, okay.
They don't necessarily have to. But looking at the panel and the judges on it, I think there's a good chance that they may reach the 14th Amendment issue as well.
Okay.
And in that case, that could put us in the express lane in the Ninth Circuit.
That would be amazing. And if we so when do we expect our case to be heard? Let's say they render a decision in those probably 2 religious exemption cases by August or maybe September. When do you think that we'll get our hearing?
A little hard to say because then that at least unfreezes us and, we could get back in traffic again. We can get back on track. But it could take quite a few more months. It could take anywhere from 6 to 9 months more because we haven't even filed our opening brief yet.
Because we're on ice.
Because we're stayed is the term. So we haven't even filed our opening brief. And then they get to file a response brief, and then we get to file a rebuttal brief. And then they spend several months reading the briefs, and then you have an oral argument, and then they spend a few more months mulling it over to write their decision. So if they decide the religious freedom cases the way we think they're going to decide them, our odds of prevailing are going to be quite good, but it still could drag out for a while.
Yeah. And how interesting, because we're attacking this mandate problem in so many ways. There are the groups doing the religious exemption cases, and then Free Now Foundation has a case to force the Americans with Disability Act waiver onto schools, which is kind of a medical exemption, but it's not a state medical exemption, so it doesn't go through the system. So those are 2 types of exemptions that people, the cases are trying to achieve, but then we're coming in with the big hammer of our case, the due process case that would totally end mandates. And so we're just attacking this problem from every angle possible so that we can chip away at it until the big hammer of our case comes down and just ends this whole mandate scheme entirely, right?
Yep. I'm also very interested to see if at some point the administration wants to weigh in on any of these cases.
Yeah. Could they file an amicus brief?
Yep.
That would be amazing. Yeah. Well, we're going to have to call on the administration and our many friends in the current administration to help us with that. Well, Dr. Fox, that was a fascinating walk down the legal lane of medical freedom. And I can't thank you enough for bringing this huge case on behalf of all the citizens of California who really absolutely have to have that choice again in vaccination. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your brilliance and your wisdom. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been a great pleasure and a lot of fun.
Always. Okay, thank you. We are so happy to have as our prime sponsor, Mish International, Northern California's acclaimed specialists in rare coins and gold and silver investments. Our friend and supporter, Robert Mish, is the same principal that started the company back in 1963, and he's still there every day with 63 years of experience. He has integrity, reliability, and fair pricing, whether you're buying or selling. When you have business to do with precious metals, you'll always be treated well at Mish International. Call 650-324-9110 and tell Robert that Alex sent you.